Okay, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining. Uh, hopefully we get some more people popping in here. I just sent out a reminder to join us for this discussion about creating a West Virginia Cider Advisory Board, and hopefully maybe even a cider guild or some sort of beverage industry group in the future. So that is what we're gonna hopefully cover with a handful of people here today. But just to get started, I do want to make sure that I launch a poll, and I'll do that here in just a couple minutes. And hopefully we get some more, a handful of people joining us, and that way I can get some additional feedback. So welcome. This is the WVU Extension Cider School for 2022. Thank you all for participating. If you've been here multiple times with us, you are kind of our guinea pig group, and I appreciate you hanging out as we figure this out and hopefully make it better in the future. Everything is recorded, and that way you can watch it at a later date. I have made a playlist for everything related to the cider school, and I'm going to go ahead and put that into the chat box. That is specifically for the 2022 cider school. But if you missed any of the sessions because of the time of day they happen, or if there's content you want to go back and review, that is the playlist for all of our content. And I'll make sure that in the future, people also have access to that link. It is public, so you can find it if you just start typing into YouTube or even typing into Google Extension Service Cider School. It should pop up. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge that this series is supported by the West Virginia Department of Agriculture Specialty Crop Block Grant Program under this feasibility study for the West Virginia Economic Development Initiative and cider apple production. So hopefully this will be very beneficial for some people down the road. All right, so with a couple of you that are here, thank you for joining me. So I just want to get your feedback real quick to figure out which role, this is multiple choice, where your role is within the cider industry. I have been kind of keeping tabs on this from session to session, and there have been people that are interested in production and starting an orchard, doing it for personal use. We have some folks that are cider makers that have joined us, some landowners, not really agritourism operators per se. So maybe that's something we can check in on in the future, and then also a handful of ag service providers. Yes, so if you click other, put it in the chat for me, and that way I have just a kind of little ongoing record. And some wanting to make sweet cider. Okay. Right. And this question, because it's not really a poll question, you can just write in the chat if you have anything additional that you would like to contribute. So each and personal use. Excellent. Every session so far, we've asked about challenges that you see in two realms. One of them is for those interested in growing apples, specifically for the cider industry in West Virginia. And then we have a separate question looking at challenges for the cider industry as a whole. So I would love it if you'd be willing to address them separately. Question number two, and maybe there's been additional things that have popped up as you've participated in the presentations with us, or if you need to go back, you can always give me feedback later about challenges for apple growers as we move forward. And again, that's not really a poll question. You can just put your comments into the chat box for me. So some of the comments that we have received through the various sessions have been related to disease concerns, startup costs, that delayed return on investment, which we know is very real when you're starting an orchard, needing support from state and federal agencies for a variety of things, aggregation, distribution, workforce, which is relevant to all of agriculture, of course, and a lot of other industries right now. The grant process, which hopefully I can help with here in the future, and then finding affordable, efficient apple processing equipment. So that is related to apple growers, but that's also kind of a dual response for the cider industry, depending on your uses and what you're trying to do. If you're wanting to do the cider yourself, or if you're just wanting to process and sell juice to cider makers, lots of different things there. So if you have anything in addition to this, feel free to toss it in the chat box for me, and that way I have it moving forward. And a handful of these are things that we could address, or lots of these things are things that we could address. Of course, they all take time, but that's something that an advisory board can definitely help with. And I didn't see anyone mention like policy specific stuff, so that is something, maybe that's just cider industry wide, that a guild and or an advisory board could work on, and a guild, or whatever beverage industry type of thing that would look like. Okay. And that other question that we're hoping to get answered, is for the wider cider industry and not only the folks that are working in the realm of apple production. So that could be milling, it could be juice if you're separate, it could be the cider processing itself, maybe it's the distribution of the product, or the sellers, even the consumers. And again, I've pulled together some information from the previous sessions to see what kind of feedback we've gotten. Part of it has to do with the climate that we're in, which depending on who you ask, some say it is perfect, others say we have challenges. The paperwork to start a cidery, yes. Lack of knowledge about what the industry could be across the state. I think that's something we might need to expand upon just a little bit, which way they want to go with that kind of answer. Assistance when it comes to financials, and of course, mentoring is always important. And then the path to entry, what does that look? Creating a step-by-step guide. And that's something that we've discussed creating as part of this grant process and additional projects related to cider in West Virginia. That's something that Extension can also help with. Grant writing assistance for larger grants, value-added producer specifically is mentioned here. That would be a great one. And if that's of interest, we could definitely have our partners with USDA address some of the needs for that grant that typically comes out in late winter / early spring, depending on the year and their budgets. But that is something that people should definitely look into if you're interested in a little bit larger of a scale, I would say, within the cider industry, um, and it would work for producers and for the other side as well. And then obtaining varieties and assistance knowing how to do preparation of property to start out. Oh, so just kind of a beginner type of thing. Excellent. Yes, so these are things we can definitely address. If you have additional comments of challenges for the wider cider industry, again, please go ahead and you can toss those into the chat box, and I'll probably close out the slides and we can make this a more casual conversation here in a minute. And I also do want to mention that today we're just the goal is to have a discussion and see who's interested in joining an advisory board. So hopefully you will give me feedback on that piece as we move forward, because that is something we feel like is very important to help guide the larger industry, but also give us within extension and where we are able to give feedback to other service providers that are working in this area, because it will help kind of guide our future projects on our end, and then also guide an industry group that is made up of people working across the spectrum of the cider industry. So that's kind of the goal here for today. And I do want to also mention that we do have one more session that will happen on July 13th, before we kind of are wrapping up this first cider school. And that particular session will be on the cider industry and the economic feasibility for it, talking about marketing opportunities, some of the legal considerations, and which could hopefully help guide some of that policy work in the future as to what some of the sometimes maybe messy or sometimes older, might be prohibition era law looks like. And so that is going to be presented by Dr. Dolores Ignites and Jesse Richardson at the law school. And I'm also going to chime in there on that session as well. So definitely join us on July 13th for that particular presentation. But today we're getting casual. So I'm going to stop my share, and that way you don't have to look at slides the entire time. If you have video or a camera that's not going to totally kill your bandwidth, I encourage you to turn it on now if you're able. If not, that's perfectly fine too. But I would love for you all to speak to each other. If you have a microphone, please just go ahead and open that up and chime in, and we can just have a chat. Um, or if you do not have a microphone, feel free to go ahead and use that chat box. But I am here more to help facilitate the discussion. I'm not here to totally lead all of this. So I'm hoping to hear from all of you when it comes to what are the needs and what could our advisory board look like, um, and then what else can we do? What do you want to see out of this type of project, out of the school in the future? Because we are hoping to do this multiple times. We don't want to make this just a one and done thing, because we know that there is a lot of potential when it comes to cider in West Virginia. So with that, I'm going to start calling people out. If you're here, please participate. How about we do a round robin kind of thing first? Again, if you're able, you can either put in the chat box or just open up your microphone, but can you introduce yourselves to me? So Jason first, Jason Hunt. If you're able to chat, please do so.
I am.
Okay, quick. We have names, of course, but if you have a farm already, or where you are within cider, if it's just interest, or if you're wanting to do more with that.
We I grafted trees this spring. They are a West Virginia seedling from my family. Really, I wanted to see what I could do with those. A lot of people, what you're bringing up are challenges, and the, not to put too fine a point on it, but the single best thing anybody who has questions could do is do a business plan. It will answer, or in the process of doing your business plan, you will answer your questions for where's our money going to come from? How much money are we going to need? Where do we find this equipment? All of that will kind of come out of doing your business plan. It's one thing to sit back and go, I want to do this, or I'm really thinking about making cider, or these are our dreams. But a business plan will pull all of that together and show you where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And a group like this is one of those. A group like this will help everybody get in that direction, whether it's finding equipment or whether it's finding legal advice or whether it's finding grants and things like that. And like you said, going to the FDA, one of the previous classes, you had the lady from the FDA on there talking about grants and such. And she's the lady to go to. She can tell you where you need to go, what you need to do, and the kind of information that they are looking for that you can plug into your request for that sort of aid.
Oh, that's perfect. I'm glad somebody else mentions a business plan and I don't have to bring that up.
Well,
Excellent. Yes.
when you start asking other professionals what you have to do to get started, and it's the elephant in the room. It's the thing that nobody wants to do. It's not something that I want to do, but it is something that my partner absolutely insists on doing, and it is something that we need to do, and it is something that you have to do. You can't go into this. I mean, you can, but you're going to be making cider in your basement for yourself and your family. And that is absolutely fantastic. If that is what you want to do, then go and do that. But if you want to have anything where you're receiving money, or where you're making money, or where you're providing a service, or where you're providing a tourism service, or whatever it is, if you want to get serious about it, you have to do a business plan. And in the process of doing that business plan, everything else will come together. Now, you can't do this in a vacuum. You have to go and find knowledgeable resources, whether it's the university, whether it's this group, whether it's whatever group you guys decide to form. Because in the process of figuring this out for ourselves, it really feels like you are in a vacuum. You know, you can watch all of the YouTube videos. You can listen to all of the podcasts. You can read all of the books. And it still can feel like you're just sitting in a vacuum. Where do I go? Where do I start? Well, you start at a business plan. And if you have to find somebody to help you lay that out, and lots of resources are online, but if you have to find somebody to help you lay that out, then that's what you have to do. And if you guys have resources for people who can help, whether it's through the law school or wherever, with business plans and things like that. And that's where you need to start. Not sure if that's what you were looking for, but that's what I had to say about it.
No, that is wonderful. Yes. So I'm looking for some introductions from everybody, a little bit of feedback, and of course, I also want to hear what people want out of an advisory board. But we'll get to that in a minute. We can circle back around for that part. Let's see, Chris, I see you have your video open or up. Thank you. Do you want to go ahead and do a little intro as well?
Sure, I will. I'm Chris Butler. I work for Natural Resource Partners out of Huntington, West Virginia. We're a large landowner here in the state of West Virginia. Our primary business is coal mining here in West Virginia. But as most of you guys know, the land gets reclaimed, and we're looking for other, ventures to repurpose that land after it's reclaimed. Large orchards with a secondary income stream other than the orchard, such as a cidery, maybe, it could be a project that we could put on one of our properties and increase workforce here in West Virginia, employment in West Virginia, and continue some things like that. Many times, the surface mining that occurs, miners, after the mining's over, they go other places to get jobs. Those employees could be retrained and become orchard workers, or, those type things. Try to keep our workforce here in West Virginia and keep them in place. So that's really my interest in sitting in on all these sessions, is to learn more about orchards and the cider industry. I don't know if I bring much to the table other than just trying to gather information to see if, this is a possible opportunity for us to look into, because we do hold a lot of property across the state in many different locations, some Boone, Logan County, and then some in northern West Virginia as well. So that's really why I'm here. And like I said, I'm not sure I have much to bring about it. It just, my one hobby though is I do home brewing for beer. So it was a little draw to me about cider as well. So
Well, thank you for joining us, Chris. And I will tell you, and I will tell everybody that it doesn't matter what scale you're at and what your interest is. If you are here, your voice is so valuable because it lets us know what approaches we should take and what kind of information we should give out, whether or not you're a single person starting a business, whether you represent a different group, if you're interested in workforce development, if you're interested in reclaimed lands or reclaimed mine lands, there's a huge potential spectrum here, and everyone is definitely valued in this discussion. So thank you so much for joining us. And I will point out, I know that our National Guard through their Patriot Gardens program and the National Guard in general does have and has been working on apples on reclaimed mine land. And I've heard a variety of stories on it, and I have not unfortunately been able to go and see the location yet in person. But I've heard that the trees are producing, and I think they are focused on more of like a fresh eating apple. So I don't have a whole lot of details on that, but if you haven't spoken with them yet, definitely chat with the National Guard. Melissa Stewart there is one of the people working on that project.
okay, great. Yeah, no, that's good information.
Yeah. Let's see. The next one on my screen is Jane. Is it Carruthers? Carruthers? Okay, so maybe Jane's not available. Oh, Galadriel Hunt has their hand raised.
Hi there.
Hi. Would you like to go next?
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
I am the aforementioned partner of Jason Hunt. And I am a business owner. I have owned my own business in Pennsylvania for almost 15 years now. And I personally, for one, love business plans. we did we did one at the very beginning of our business journey, and I revisit it every year, and I am the one who hammered to Jason that he absolutely had to have a business plan, and then he went out and heard that mantra from everywhere else. My passion for cider and cideries and the orcharding and the family apple comes from listening to his journey. And then exploring the world and finding out that there is this just amazing world of cider, and incredible opportunities in West Virginia, and that you wouldn't even know about otherwise if it weren't for his passion for saving this family apple. So that's why I'm here. And I'm down for anything the advisory board wants to do, because I think guidance information for people is wildly important. I could not have started my own businesses without guidance from other people. And I think that's wildly important for all these people who have a dream to have a solid plan behind that dream.
Well, you're going to be my spokesperson for everybody creating a business plan if they don't have one already. Thank you so much for joining. This is wonderful.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Oh, Gail, I see you popped on with video as well. Are you able to speak? I see your mouth moving, but it sounds like you're muted. And if you're on a phone, sometimes you have to press *6 on your phone. And then other times there's a little like mute, unmute thing.
Okay, can you hear? Can
There
you
you
hear?
go. Yes.
Okay. I'm Gail Bartlett. Hello, everyone. It's a very interesting discussion, and I've really enjoyed the cider school so far. My history is that I have a family farm in Rennick, West Virginia, that belonged to my great-grandparents. It's been in our family since 1897. And we have taken the old granary building. My husband, Paul, is a chef by profession, and he runs a consulting business for restaurants in Baltimore, Maryland. But we spend 8 to 10 days a month in Rennick at the farm. And my husband has planted 140 different apple trees, and he has quite a number of the old varieties. And he's really been amazing at being consistent for years and years doing this. And he does make excellent cider. A few years ago, we started applying for our TTB license. So we have our TTB license for making hard cider. And during that, we created a business plan and a lease agreement with the farm, because I'm involved in both sides of the business of running the farm too, which has cattle on it. So where we are now is we have our license to make apple brandy and to make hard cider, but we're trying to work with West Virginia to have the small farm winery and distillery designation. So we need to figure out a lot of administrative and business aspects of how to do that and how to start marketing our cider.
So just because you're really close to the area, have you spoken with Josh Bennett at Hawknub at all?
Yes, Paul, my husband, Paul Bartlett, and Josh are pretty good buddies. We've been over to visit them several times, and Josh comes and visits Paul at our cidery, and they've been in, some good conversations.
Okay, excellent. Because I know Josh is always looking for more apples if you weren't ready to, if you have already.
Yeah, we had a bumper crop last fall, and it looks like it's going to be really good this year too. So I think that subject did come up.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us. This is wonderful. It is so exciting to hear that another person and multiple people are interested in starting a cidery and distillery, farm winery. I know there's different designations depending on how much juice you have and depending on what you grow yourself. It's
right. We grow now 100% of our apples. So we've gone from
wow.
2 years ago, we had a late freeze in May, like around the May 8th freeze, I call it. 2 different times we've lost apples to that. But last year we missed the freeze and we had just a gorgeous, I can't remember how many bushels it was, but we had to bring in help to pick the apples. So I wish Paul was on this call, because he's really the cider maker. So he knows the science. He know, I'm the helper.
Again, everyone is very valuable in this conversation. So I appreciate you being here and representing and being part of the group. It's good that we have people kind of in different areas of the state too. That's really nice. And actually I missed Jason and Galadriel. Did you all say which portion of the state you're in? And I can always come back to that too.
My service is popping in and out. So Jason's family farm is located just outside of Charleston.
Okay, excellent. And then let's see. Oh, the names have bounced around on my screen. Allison Taylor. I don't have you yet.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I just sorry, the dogs are barking here in the background. From Pocahontas County in West Virginia, and we just have a few apple trees on the family farm here, and I just play around with making cider in the fall. So this is just basically I'm interested for personal use with this. So
Was that a sweet cider?
it just depends on, I don't add sugar to it, so it just depends on the apple. So generally they are pretty sweet, yes.
All right, well, thank you and welcome to the group. Well, definitely, I am curious to know and talk about how we can also integrate a lot of individuals, because there are tons of people across the state growing apples. I mean, I even have apples, and I don't have a lot of property here. But what that can look like for people at a variety of scales, and whether you're interested in doing a sweet or a hard cider, and what that looks like, and maybe aggregating apples at some point if you have enough, and that kind of thing. So the last person on my list we have not been able to hear from is Jane. Jane, if you are able to talk, please do so, or if you can put anything in the chat box if you're there. I just want to make sure that you are recognized and not ignored on this call, if you're available. Well, that's okay. We can come back. So I guess my next question is, when it comes to how a cider advisory board would be useful for you all, and the types of feedback that you need to really help with some of these things that were pointed out to better the entire industry. I mean, it sounds like we need to help individuals with those business plans. And of course, one of the things that we can do at the university and through extension is that education piece. I do not represent the policy side nor the regulatory side. So those are partners that we could bring on board to address some of those topics. And I can't write the grant for you, but that's a guide I could help with if that's something that's needed. But I'm wondering, when it comes to an advisory board, one, is anyone in particular interested in sitting on it, and helping kind of lead some of the charges across that will help the industry within the state? But then, what would be useful for you all, assuming you'd be members of like a cider guild or a beverage group or something along those lines? Somebody with vested interest, right? You want to see this thing succeed. So what types of initiatives would be important for the advisory board to work on? Hopefully that makes sense. Well, I can just go down the list again. Jason, would you like to chime in with anything in particular? Started with you last time.
I guess people need to decide what they're trying to accomplish. Again, it kind of goes back to the business plan side of things. But if you're only on 20 gallons, you don't need licenses to do that legally. And if that's not what you're going to do, then that's a completely different path. So maybe laying out paths for what everybody are trying to accomplish ultimately would be a really good place to start. Because getting your license, getting your whether it's the small farm license or whether it's 2 licenses, for whether it's a winery license or a liquor license through the TTB, can be very daunting, and people don't want to make that much. So you have to get those licenses if they're not making enough, or if they're not selling it outside of events. Start looking into those. It will determine that in itself determine the path that you're going to take. And the people who have already, she's on the screen now, will have really good advice for people who are going to. So getting your winery license is one thing. Getting your liquor license to make distillates is a completely different thing.
Yes.
And it's not as, a lot of the information out there is also old. And by old, I mean, it's only a few years old. A lot of those laws, the federal government have changed recently. You see posts on it and people say, getting your license to start a distillery it's going to cost you $50,000 and you have to do this, and you have to do this. And it's years of fighting for it. And that's just not true anymore. I'm not going to say that it's easy. I haven't done it, but it's not the challenge that it used to be. So finding those paths and sections that an individual wants to go is where to start.
Gail, would you like to chime in and follow up on that since you all are working through that process?
Yes, thank you, Jason. You're right. The process with TTB can be daunting, but I wouldn't say it should prohibit anyone who wants to do that. It took time. We knew that it would take at least a year, and our applications happened to be in the stream during the worst of COVID during 2020. And I believe that slowed everything down a little bit. But the person we worked with was very knowledgeable, obviously, and knew that we had a smaller farm and we are, I'm a retired law librarian. My husband is still running his own little company, but it gives us time to go to our farm and work on our farm and work on my grandmother, who was a dairy farmer, also had a beautiful large orchard, which over the years, many trees were struck by lightning. They're not there anymore. So when Paul and I started thinking, besides renting to our neighbor so he can put cattle on the pasture, what can we do to make the farm work and keep the farm in the family and keep going? And our interest was in the growing our own apple trees, not just buying fruit from someone else. So we actually started that process years ago. But people need guidance in those sort of questions, as far as many regulatory questions that will come up. The TTB process, I mean, the Fed said that Paul doesn't have to be bonded because we're producing less than so many gallons per year. Whereas the state of West Virginia now, Norma Parsons is telling him that he will have to be bonded. So those kind of questions are going to come up for everyone who's trying to produce hard cider or fruit brandy or wine, of course. And they're going to come up and there needs to be some type of advice, some sort of consistent policy and a place to go. And I think West Virginia University is that place and is on track to help with those types of questions that the farmer or the cider maker comes up with. I think that would be very important. And I think Jason was right about it's what you're going to do with it. Like, we just want to supplement our Social Security or our savings. We love to do it, and we do want to open a tasting room. So that's where we are now. We have not quite gotten all our ducks in a row to open our tasting room in an old dairy parlor that we have in a big, beautiful dairy barn that's no longer used as a dairy barn. So that could repurpose the farm building. But we don't want to be even as big as Hawks Knob. Like, we don't want to be, what's that distillery in Lewisburg, Smooth Ambler. We don't want to be multi-million dollars, growing, because I'm 71 and my husband is 70. We just want to have a good time with it, make really excellent product, have people come in and enjoy it. And we would like to place it a few places, or have people be able to come in and buy it at our tasting room if they want to. So we have we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go to figure it out.
And there was something I wanted to ask you about, and it's slipping my mind, and I'm gonna have to come back to it because I cannot remember what that was. Anyway, well, thank you for the input. I think those are excellent things that an advisory board could do, and things to look at, and things that we can contribute in the way of information. Because I'm not sure where everybody finds information if you just have to kind of cherry pick people out of different departments right now, and or if there's a guide at the larger industry level. I know Brooke from Swill Dog is part of the American Cider Association, but I'm honestly not super familiar with all of the different resources that the nationwide industry groups are able to offer, and how customized that needs to be at the state level versus addressing issues that come up at the federal level. So Chris, if you are able to chime in here, looking at this from a slightly different perspective, whereas you're wanting to look at you're wanting to do apple production, but on reclaimed mine land, but through an entity that isn't specifically interested in cider production. You're really looking for a use for larger amounts of property. Are there certain things that would be beneficial from your perspective for a cider advisory group, or a larger, large, a West Virginia sized industry group to look at?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, and really appreciated Gail's vision there for repurposing the family farm, and allowing them to supplement their income, with that, in the tasting room. From our perspective, we may be looking at a little more industrial size type operation, where we may have hundreds of acres of apples that we could grow, and then maybe lease a space for somebody to come in and create, make the cider and market it, things like that. From our perspective, our company does not want to be a cider maker. That's not our objective here, but it is to kind of repurpose the land that we have, like Gail's doing with her farm, and make a beneficial, longer term, sustainable activity on the properties. So I think from our perspective, how does one go about identifying land that is proper for apple trees, right? And I think some of the previous seminars, have led into some of that, but from our perspective, we would need some additional assistance in doing that kind of thing. We may have 100 acres here and 100 acres here, and somebody will be like, do not even touch that 100 acres. It's not going to work. You're going to waste your time. But it's that kind of, and maybe it's more like a general outline of how one would begin to evaluate, lands proper to do this, and then to grow the apples. I guess from what I've learned here is really the cider industry is really two separate industries. One is the apple growing industry, and then one is, you know, converting those apples into a cider, which is really a separate industry, kind of from my perspective, because we do have people that grow apples elsewhere in the state as well, but these are very specific apples, and you know, aggregating crops for somebody that maybe is a larger cider producer in the state. I know at one point there was the hemp industry came into the state, and they were giving out hemp or I guess you call them crop permits for hemp. And a fellow I knew, he got one. He grew his first stuff of hemp, and he said, "Okay, now what do I do with it? I don't have any place to take it." So he was kind of, you know, it was like we had the cart before the horse there. So, and I think we can look in West Virginia as well and see that we have multiple craft brewers, you know, more than two, but we only have really two cideries that are commercial in the state. So, you know, is there opportunity? I think there's opportunity to grow that side here in West Virginia as well. So that's kind of what we're looking for is, you know, is our property in a location that's applicable to grow these type of apples? And then we need to find somebody that would like to take on a commercial scale operation, and be that $1 million or $2 million type producer each year.
Chris, have you had your soil tested on some of these sites?
We haven't. We're really, what we're doing is we're just in the beginning stages of it, and you know, part of my job is to look at what our properties, what future uses, and not necessarily just apple orchards. You know, we're also looking at some other things that we're actually involved with West Virginia University on, such as rare earth mineral recovery and a bunch of different other things related to our property. So this was just one avenue that we're kind of investigating, but we haven't done any real soil testing or anything like that at this point. And Gail, sometimes surface mine land is not the most productive land.
Right.
You know, because one thing that has happened in the past is DEP required you to really compact the soils to prevent sedimentation in the runoff.
Right.
And as every good farmer knows, you don't compact your land to plant crops. You plow it and you turn it over, and so sometimes it's a challenge for these mine sites, and we'll just have to work through that if there's an opportunity.
See, I would think that was my first thought. It's not going to be prime soil at this point. It may not be suitable.
Yeah. And lots of times what happens sometimes in the mining industry, the OSM, Office of Surface Mining through the federal government, they have a reforestation program where they've really tried to change that law. So more modern mining permits are not compacting those soils like they were before. So new mining is probably going to have a much more productive you know, opportunity to grow trees, forests, other crops that way. So that's a good thing.
Now, what is your entity? I missed that in the beginning that you work with.
It's Natural Resource Partners.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested in this. I like working with USDA and with the farm agency in Lewisburg, and I've worked a lot with those people. A lot of my farm is in a conservation easement where it has to remain agricultural.
Right. At least I don't know if that helps much, but that's kind of from our perspective. Maybe we're looking a little, we're looking at this as more of an enterprise, you know, on a larger scale. And maybe at the end of the day, our property only becomes an apple orchard, and somebody else takes our apples and takes them elsewhere. You know, that'd be fine with us.
That's an interesting opportunity, really. That is one of the biggest challenges you hear from a lot of the cider makers in the US, particularly, is that cider apples are a challenge to find, they're a challenge to source. Looking at some of the previous presentations that we've had through the cider school, they've run some of the numbers on the difference in price you can get culinary apples versus cider apples. You're looking for a lot of money that may not necessarily be in the picture ultimately, but you also seem to really be looking long term. Those soils on those reclaimed mine sites can be regenerated. They can grow apple trees. And there's two keys to that is one, it takes time. It doesn't take as long to regenerate soil as what a lot of the previous science has said that it will. You can do it a little bit faster. We're still talking years. And it can be done with trees, in conjunction with trees or vineyards or whatever people wanted to plant there. One of the keys with that soil, even being regenerative, is still finding trees that are appropriate to that soil that will grow there. Gold Rush is a tree variety that likes rocky and challenging soils. And there are a couple of producers in the United States and in the UK that are producing phenomenal ciders from that apple. That apple is also a culinary apple, so it would serve two purposes. So there are lots of possibilities there. You guys have lots of land, and seems to be looking long term. So regenerative apple farming would really be an interesting option, especially for West Virginia on those properties.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm mainly taking notes, so you guys can have, you can definitely engage
I've-
in the discussion.
I was raised around apples, and everybody goes, apples are so hard to grow. They're this, they're that. There's so many diseases. There's so many challenges. It's just, you can't do it without spraying. And all you hear is the negative. And I've planted a few trees over the years, or I can just talk about my recent experiences as well. And yes, there are diseases when you get to trees, and there are diseases when you get to apples. A lot of those are making apples pretty diseases. And also, apple trees are incredibly resilient. They're both. They're really challenging and they're really resilient. So my point in this part of the conversation is I started looking into soil science and things like that. Regenerative soil science, as science is looking at it today, is absolutely fascinating, and really the direction that new farms, because they're looking at planting fresh on reclaimed sites. I mean, that would be a dream for a lot of West Virginians. We're going to be able to reclaim these sites. We're going to reclaim them in a new and scientific way that makes them better farming than traditional farming ever has. I mean, I don't think it gets any better for West Virginia than that.
Yeah, and Chris, it sounds like you're already working with WVU. I know there's we have people that are specifically looking at reclaimed mine lands. Dr. Jeff Skousen's one of them, and Lewis McDonald. And then I know there's another big like biomass project looking at, what does that look like on reclaimed mine lands? And I, again, there are experts in that area, and I am not one of them. I know like just this much, just enough to tell somebody else that there's something going on. Yes. And there's also some other interesting crossover that West Virginia offers when it comes to like a lot of poultry litter coming out of the Eastern Panhandle, that they want to move that resource away from things like the Chesapeake Bay. And I know someone has approached me previously about where to, he dropped off, about where to take that. And one of those things has been like, how could we potentially integrate that into these mine lands that need a little bit of TLC. So hopefully that is something that is considered here in the future. I am realizing that it is almost 1 o'clock. So I want to make sure I'm very respectful of your time. I appreciate all of you joining here today and giving some feedback, and also getting some of these kind of notes. Notes of how we should move forward with, and things that an advisory board can tackle here in the future, and some of those resources that'll be, I apologize. my toddler just ran by. So things that the group can address, and things that we can definitely assist with through WVU, and basically guides. It sounds like some guides, some presentations, some more education, some additional connections, and some of these and lots of things I'm sure that I have no knowledge about when it comes to designations of being a farm winery and distillery, and all of those details. So those are all good things. If you all have additional comments you want to toss in, if not, I want to make sure that I don't run over too much unless you want to stick around and chat. um, so yeah, if you have any additional comments, go ahead, or you want to share a story, we can do that now. If not, it's almost 1 o'clock, and I don't want to keep you. But thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your insight and expertise.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. And it was nice chatting with everyone. And I think I learned some new things to think about with reclaiming the land and restoring soil and whatnot. It's a fascinating discussion. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you so much for putting this together, Lisa. I feel like I could sit and talk to Gail for hours. So I think that's exactly what this advisory board should be doing, is putting people together who have similar interests and different resources that they can piece together the best way forward for each other. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you all for being here. I like that idea. Maybe in the future we'll have an in-person get together at some point, and I'll cover everybody's travel. And that way we can all swap stories, and maybe it'll be on farm somewhere. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. I really, really appreciate your time and sharing these stories. And apparently I'm getting kicked off. And we'll follow up again on the 13th. We're going to do more of a market assessment. We'll talk about some of those legal pieces, and that will wrap up this first cider school. Again, we do hope to offer this in the future. I really want to bring in some more people that are able to talk about processing and milling and some of those more what might be considered a downstream type of thing. And that way we are really addressing the whole breadth and not only one little piece, which has mainly been production so far. So have a wonderful afternoon. Join us again on July 13th. And thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye.